Now, one of the things you'll notice here is that the translucent medium that I put over the painting, in this case I used golden acrylics clear tar gel. It's almost become clear, not totally, but I'm still painting into it almost as if I'm painting into oil on an oil painting. So the painting process here of me picking up paint and applying it elsewhere is very similar to oiling up an oil painting and painting into that surface. Now it'll dry, and it will almost be totally dry by the end of this session, and which is fine because I'll be done. But the retarding gel is really working well for me here. Now what I'm doing in this case is I'm picking up some paint in the sky that's still wet and just painting in some sky holes. I'm using one of the little plastic ceramic tools that I bought at an art store that was going out of business, and it seemed like it was made back in the 50s. Very simple tool, but I've seen wood ones around that are very comparable to this. So it's just I'm just scraping in some of the wet surfaces. This is called sgraffito, and it reveals the color underneath. So I'm actually using this ceramic tool almost like a brush. I'm mixing up color with it and just applying it like a palette knife or a bristle flat. So I switch over to the bigger palette knife. I've decided that some of the shadows are a little bit too complex, and so I'm going to try to simplify them. This doesn't do the trick, so I have to use other means, but it's just a way to kind of push some color into that area. One of the things that you don't want to do is have your shadow area have the same textural quality as the lights of your painting. There's something about it that just does not work. It does not read or translate as a shadow area. So you want to keep your shadow areas fairly thin dimensionally. So you want that paint to just lie a little bit flatter than elsewhere. You can build up more texture in other parts. Another thing I'm doing as I work through these passages is I'm trying to pay attention to some of the edges. Now I like that one edge on the left there. It's a nice hard edge. But the other edges I need to soften, like I'm doing. And sometimes I soften it by just pushing the palette knife onto it, like I'm doing on that side. But other times I can take that ceramic tool and just kind of scrape along one edge. Now here I've switched over to using a canvas scraper. Now the next tool I grab here is just the plastic spatula type tool that you might use to apply texturing to like a wall or something, if you were going to finish a wall inside your home. And they're very cheap, and you can cut them down to be the size you want them to be. This one's, I think, approximately 5 inches across or something like that, but it's very good for simplifying areas. In this case, I'm just trying to simplify those shadow areas. And you can use the edge to kind of scrape. Now here's just a thinner version of that same type of spatula. And like I say, these are great because you can customize them. I've got some that are like thin, like a ½ inch or something like that I've cut down to, and I use those to sort of scrape little thin patches like a tree trunk or something. So here I'm just sort of flattening some of the strokes. Now here I'm using a knife again. This is a different oil scraping knife, and they're basically just like a knife that you'd use in the kitchen, except they're a little bit duller. and quite a bit more robust. I mean, they're very, very strong. They have a lot of steel in the blade. They're thick on the backside, and so I just use those to scrape little lines, scratch edges, soften edges by just sort of breaking them up. And I decided that I wanted to see a little bit of the sky through the tree there. It was just a little too large of a space. The tree, the darkness of the tree. So I'm just restating like the mountain, and that shape was just a little too heavy. So there I am, just restating some of the grass. So here I am, just kind of simplifying some of the strokes down in the grass. So now you don't see it on camera, but I'm stepping back quite a bit to take a look at this from a distance, and looking through my reduction lens to make sure that the overall pattern is working. So I like that a little better. So I want to beef up that shadow on the side and break up that line just a little bit. So that looks a little bit better. So here I am using just a little blunt palette knife. I have a little tin filled with palette knives. You can kind of see it on the far right behind me there. And I'll use, on any one painting, I might use 5 different tools. I might use a scraping knife, a large, palette knife. Now here I'm scraping back into the wet paint to pull out the reflection of that tree trunk. And again, I just find the groove from the previous stroke into the dried acrylic underpainting, and I just follow that groove and just clean that out by scraping it with the knife. This knife is just, I don't know, I've just found it very, very useful. And I use it as a palette knife too. Sometimes I'll pick up paint with it and apply it as I'm doing. No, this is I'm using one of the plastic scraping tools. That's a tool that they use to finish drywall. That's the word I was trying to think of earlier. So then I just kind of rough up that edge a little bit by scraping it. Pick up some paint, add it here and there. Now I've decided that the shadows were a little bit too cool. So a really nice color to add into foliage, you want to keep it to read as a shadow, is to use purple. It's just got enough red in it that it warms that up, and yet reads as the cool side of an object. So here I'm just scraping into the water, and I want to introduce some more randomness. Sometimes with a palette knife you can get a little bit of a mechanical look, and so that's one reason I go in with this knife and scrape, is just to get more random kind of effect. Now here I am, this is a couple days later, the paint is dried, and I'm layering in some clear tar gel, and you can see how it just makes kind of a gray, or kind of a bluish scumble over the top. And here I am, I'm laying in some blue acrylic paint into that. Now I wanted to put in a little thinner layer, so for some reason I was just a little heavy-handed. So what I need to do is kind of work that out, and then start rubbing it in with a paper towel. I'm using this really nice paper towel that doesn't leave any lint, so that's one thing to look for when you use a rag or a paper towel, is you don't want to leave any little paper flecks. And sometimes the texture of the acrylic will pull off paper, or even really thinner cloth like muslin or something. So I've kind of flattened out the glaze, and I just keep scumbling it in, rubbing it in, and you can see there's a little bit of whiteness in the shadow area, and that's just a bit of that clear tar gel. It hasn't dried, so you have to kind of compensate for that. But I'm just putting little dabs of blue here and there and kind of rubbing it in to give a little bit of uniformity. I don't want to overdo it. I thought I did overdo it, so I want to remove some of it. So I add some water via my spray bottle and just pick up a little bit more. And you can't see it from this distance, but the blue is kind of filling in some of the little cracks, the textured areas, almost like an antiquing effect if you were finishing a piece of furniture or something. And it can give a more subtle effect than a thick layer of a glaze. And in this next shot, the still, it's all finished.